Whoa! Wait. Nah. Stop right there. Read that again. People are shaking, just standing next to your name. Not your face, not your voice, not your presence, your name. And the part that's breaking their mind. You didn't threaten anybody. You didn't scream. You didn't chase validation. You didn't beg for respect. You just became so untouchable, so spiritually dangerous, so silently protected, that now people whisper when your name enters the room, like it carries something they cannot explain. And somewhere behind fake smiles, behind nervous laughs, behind those side eyes they keep throwing, there's one question echoing inside their chest. Who the hell protected him? Because what happened to you was never normal. You should have broke. You should have collapsed. You should have disappeared. You should have lost your mind. You should have become another forgotten soul, buried under betrayal, pain, and disappointment. But instead, you came back colder, calmer, sharper, stronger, different. And that's what scares them, because people can understand revenge. They can understand anger. They can understand hatred. They can understand destruction. But what they cannot understand is how somebody can walk through hell and come back with their soul untouched. That confuses evil, that terrifies fake people, that makes people wonder if something unseen is walking with you. Because they remember who you used to be. They remember when you were too kind, too patient, too available, too forgiving, too open, too soft for a world full of wolves. They remember when they thought you were easy to manipulate, easy to replace, easy to disrespect, easy to abandon. They thought your silence meant weakness. They thought your heart made you fragile. They thought your loyalty made you blind. But they were wrong, because what they called weakness was restraint. What they called softness was discipline. What they called silence was power waiting for the right moment. And now they're watching the same person they underestimated walk with an energy they can't touch. That's why they're uncomfortable. That's why your name feels heavy. That's why some people can't even say your name casually anymore. Because your name doesn't sound the same now. Your name sounds like survival. Your name sounds like mystery. Your name sounds like warning. Your name sounds like consequence. And people can feel it. You ever notice how some people change the second you walk in? Their posture changes. Their voice changes. Their eyes change. Their whole nervous system starts exposing what their mouth is trying to hide. That's not imagination. That's energy. Because energy never lies. And your energy became something dark, not evil, not cruel, not broken, just awakened. There's a difference. A broken person wants everyone to feel their pain. An awakened person doesn't need to do anything. Their presence alone exposes everybody. That's why people get nervous around you now. Because your presence became a mirror. And people hate mirrors when they're full of masks. The moment they stand next to you, they feel themselves, their lies, their jealousy, their insecurity, their hidden intentions, their secret resentment, their fake loyalty. And suddenly they can't breathe the same, because your presence became the kind of truth that makes darkness uncomfortable. That's why they keep asking, who protected him? Because they know what they did. They know what they said. They know what they tried. They know the traps they set. They know the betrayal they planned. They know the energy they sent. And yet, none of it destroyed you. Somehow the pain made you deeper. The betrayal made you wiser. The rejection made you stronger. The isolation made you dangerous. And that terrifies them. because they've never seen someone survive what was supposed to destroy them. See, most people think protection looks like prevention. They think protection means nothing bad happens, nothing painful happens, nothing unfair happens. But real protection sometimes lets you walk through the fire, so everyone can see the fire couldn't burn you. That's what they're seeing now. They're not just seeing you. They're seeing the fact that something tried to erase you and failed. That's why your name makes people uncomfortable. Because your existence became proof that not everybody can be broken. Some people are chosen by pain. Some people are rebuilt by darkness. Some people are refined by betrayal. Some people are covered by something the world cannot understand. And maybe that's you. Maybe that's why every attack made you wiser. Maybe that's why every loss made you quieter. Maybe that's why every heartbreak made you stronger. Maybe that's why every betrayal sharpened your instincts. Because while they thought life was punishing you, life was actually introducing you to yourself. And the version of you that came out, that version doesn't chase approval. That version doesn't explain itself. That version doesn't beg to be understood. That version doesn't fear being alone. That version knows who's fake, knows who's watching, knows who's smiling with poison, knows who secretly fears your growth, knows who prayed for your downfall. And the scariest part, you don't even react anymore. That silence, that cold calm, that unreadable stare, that detached energy, that's what's haunting people. Because people know how to fight anger. People know how to fight emotion. People know how to fight chaos. But they do not know how to fight someone who already made peace with losing everything. That kind of person becomes untouchable. And that's what your name carries now. It carries the energy of someone who stopped fearing what others fear. And once a person reaches that level, they become terrifying. Because now your name doesn't just remind people of who you are. It reminds them of what survived. And survival carries a different sound. Your name sounds like, I made it. I saw everything. I know the truth. I can feel intentions. I'm no longer blind. I'm no longer available. I'm no longer easy. That's why people shake. Not because you became loud, because you became undeniable. And deep down, the people who betrayed you know it most. They feel your growth before they see it. They feel your distance before you speak it. They feel your protection before they understand it. And it forces them to ask, who the hell is standing behind him? But the truth is, it was never about who stood behind you. It was about who rose inside you. Because the version of you they're afraid of was born the moment you stopped needing the world to understand your pain. The moment you stopped explaining. The moment you stopped chasing. The moment you stopped proving. The moment you stopped begging. The moment you stopped shrinking. That's when your soul changed. And once your soul changes, your name changes with it. Now your name enters rooms before you do. Now your name creates silence. Now your name creates tension. Now your name creates questions. Now your name creates fear. Because people can feel you are not who you used to be, and some of them know. They will never have access to that old version of you again. That's what really shakes them. Not your power, not your silence, not your presence, but the fact that the version of you they once played with is gone forever. And now all they can do is stand there, staring into the weight of your name, wondering what changed, while quietly asking themselves, who the fuck protected him? And the answer? Maybe nobody protected you. Maybe pain did. Maybe betrayal did. Maybe loneliness did. Maybe darkness did. Maybe God did. Or maybe you finally protected yourself. And when a person finally learns how to protect their own soul, that's when the entire world starts moving different around them. Because before this version of you used to let people step close who never deserved access. You used to hand your energy to people who only came near you to study your light so they could figure out how to dim it. You used to mistake attention for loyalty. You used to mistake closeness for love. You used to mistake words for truth. And that almost destroyed you. Not because you were weak, because your heart was real in a world that survives on masks. That was your pain. You were genuine, surrounded by performers. You were loyal, surrounded by opportunists. You were pure, surrounded by people who only knew how to consume. And when a pure soul keeps getting touched by poisoned hands, eventually, that soul either dies or transforms. You transformed. That's why your energy feels dangerous now, because your kindness still exists, but now it stands behind discernment. Your heart still beats, but now it wears armor. Your compassion still lives, but now it knows boundaries. And people hate boundaries when they were benefiting from your lack of them. That's another reason they shake. Because the old you would have opened the door. The new you can feel intentions before words even leave a mouth. The new you can sense envy inside a compliment. The new you can hear manipulation inside concern. The new you can see disrespect hiding behind fake jokes. And once a person develops that kind of sight, they become impossible to play with. That's why some people stopped smiling around you. Not because you changed for the worse, because your awareness started exposing people who were comfortable in the dark. And people hate being seen when they built their whole identity around pretending. That's why your presence alone can make weak spirits uncomfortable, because you no longer meet people with the same blindness. Now when people stand near you, they don't just feel your presence. They feel your perception, and perception is terrifying to people who survive through deception. That's why your name feels heavier now. Because your name no longer carries innocence. It carries knowing. And there is nothing more unsettling than a person who knows and stays silent. Because silence like yours is not emptiness anymore. It's observation, it's awareness, it's controlled power. And controlled power is what scares people the most. Anybody can scream, anybody can threaten, anybody can react. But someone who sees everything and still stays calm. That kind of energy makes people panic, because calmness after suffering is not normal. That kind of calm comes from surviving storms that should have shattered you. That kind of calm comes from crying alone until tears no longer control you. That kind of calm comes from losing people you thought you needed and realizing you were the one holding yourself together the entire time. That kind of calm comes from death of the old self, and old versions of you had to die for this version to exist. People don't understand that. They think you just became cold. No, you became precise. There's a difference. Cold people stop feeling. Precise people feel everything. They just no longer waste emotion where it doesn't belong. And that's why your energy feels sharp now. Because your soul is no longer leaking into everyone. Now your spirit chooses. Now your heart filters. Now your presence watches. Now your silence speaks. And people can feel that. Especially those who once thought they had permanent access to you. That's why some people can't even say your name without tension in their voice. Because your name reminds them of who they lost access to. Your name reminds them that they mishandled someone they should have respected. Your name reminds them that they watched someone they underestimated become untouchable. That kind of realization breaks people quietly. Because some people never expected you to heal. Because there comes a moment in life where pain stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like initiation. And most people never understand that. They think your scars are proof that life defeated you. They think your silence means you're still hurting. They think your distance means you became bitter. They think your darkness means you lost yourself. But what they cannot see is that your scars were never proof of defeat. They were proof of survival. Every betrayal that was meant to break your trust taught you discernment. Every abandonment that was meant to make you feel small taught you self-reliance. Every humiliation that was meant to crush your spirit taught you dignity. Every attack that was meant to destroy your confidence forced you to discover a version of yourself that never needed anyone's permission to rise. And now the same people who watched you bleed are watching you glow in a way that makes no sense to them. Because they saw the damage, they just never imagined you would become power from it. That's what unsettles people. Because wounded people are supposed to stay wounded. Broken people are supposed to stay broken. Rejected people are supposed to stay insecure. Discarded people are supposed to stay desperate. That's what the world expects. But you did something rare. You turned pain into presence. You turned suffering into wisdom. You turned loneliness into self-command. You turned betrayal into vision. And now people don't know how to stand next to you anymore without feeling exposed. Because your energy now does something dangerous. It reveals, not because you say much, because you don't need to. Your spirit speaks before you do. And when a person has survived enough darkness, their presence starts carrying a kind of unspoken authority. That authority cannot be faked. It cannot be copied. It cannot be borrowed. It can only be earned through suffering. That's why your name changed. Because your name now doesn't just remind people of who you are. It reminds people of what you survived. And survival leaves a frequency that everybody can feel, even if nobody can explain it. That's why some people lower their voice around you. That's why some people watch you from a distance. That's why some people pretend not to notice you while noticing everything about you. That's why some people cannot look you in the eyes for too long, because your eyes now carry too much truth. And truth is unbearable for people living a lie. That's what they feel, not fear of you, fear of themselves when they stand near you. Because when someone has truly walked through hell and returned with awareness, their presence becomes a mirror that forces everybody else to see what they've been hiding. And many people would rather run from themselves than face that kind of reflection. So instead they create stories, they whisper, they speculate, they ask questions. They try to make sense of something spiritual with a mind that only understands surface. They say, why is his energy different? Why does his name feel heavy? Why does the room shift when he enters? Why does it feel like something walks with him? Who the hell protected him? And the truth, maybe what protected you was every night you thought you wouldn't survive, but did. Maybe what protected you was every heartbreak that forced you to stop giving your soul to people who only wanted pieces. Maybe what protected you was every silent battle nobody ever saw. Maybe what protected you was every time you chose not to become what hurt you. Because that right there, that takes power. Anybody can become cruel after being hurt. Anybody can become cold after betrayal. Anybody can become toxic after pain. But to suffer deeply and still refuse to become poison, that changes a person. That builds a kind of strength that dark souls can feel instantly. Because darkness recognizes what it cannot consume. And that is exactly what your name became. Unconsumable. People can no longer drain you easily. Because a warning doesn't always sound loud. Sometimes a warning sounds like silence. Sometimes it sounds like calm breathing. Sometimes it sounds like footsteps that no longer hesitate. Sometimes it sounds like a name people suddenly struggle to say without feeling something shift inside them. And that is what your name became. A vibration, a presence, a signal. Not because you asked for power, because pain forced you to become someone power naturally follows. That's the part most people will never understand. They think power comes from money, from status, from followers, from attention, from influence. No, those things attract eyes. But real power changes atmospheres. Real power enters a room, and insecure people immediately feel restless. Real power says nothing, and guilty people start talking too much. Real power smiles once, and fake people suddenly cannot hold eye contact. That kind of power cannot be bought. It is built inside the furnace of suffering, and you paid for yours with nights nobody knows about, with tears nobody saw, with battles nobody heard, with wounds you had to stitch using your own hands. That is why your energy feels different now, because this version of you was expensive, and people can sense when somebody paid for their soul with pain. That's why your name does more than get attention now. It creates reactions. Some people hear your name and feel inspired. Some people hear your name and feel curious. Some people hear your name and feel drawn. But some people hear your name and feel panic. Because your name reminds them of what they did. Your name reminds them of how they treated you. Your name reminds them of who they were when they thought you would never become this. And deep inside, they know something painful. They helped create the version of you they now fear. That is a heavy truth for people to live with. Because some people laughed at your pain. Some people betrayed your trust. Some people played with your loyalty. Some people used your kindness as if it were weakness. Some people thought your heart was something they could touch carelessly. And now those same people cannot understand how the person they wounded became the person they cannot shake. That's the justice life sometimes gives, not revenge. Revelation. The revelation that the soul they tried to diminish was never small. It was simply unawakened. And once a soul awakens, everything changes. Because awakened people stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What was this trying to make me become?" That question changes everything, because suddenly your pain is no longer your prison. It becomes your training. Suddenly your betrayal is no longer your wound. It becomes your wisdom. Suddenly your loneliness is no longer your punishment. It becomes your preparation. And once life becomes preparation, you stop moving like a victim. You start moving like somebody chosen for something deeper. That's what people feel now. They feel you stopped surviving and started becoming. And becoming is terrifying to people who stayed the same. Because your growth forces others to confront their stagnation. Your peace forces others to confront their chaos. Your discipline forces others to confront their excuses. Your presence forces others to confront themselves. And most people do not want to confront themselves. So instead they call you intimidating, they call you distant, they call you cold, they call you mysterious. But what they really mean is, they can no longer access you the way they used to. That's what shakes them, because access is what people miss most when they lose someone powerful. Not conversation, not attention, the access. And your energy now feels guarded in a way that makes people realize there are doors they will never walk through again. That realization alone can haunt a person, because some people only recognize value after they lose proximity to it. And your name became proof of that.